I have been counsel for the American families of the people of Ashraf for, as Jean-Pierre said, 7 years, and currently am a member of the team that is pursuing the petition to remove the absurd terrorist label to which Paulo Casaca just referred. I look forward to the next time, incidentally, when we're all together, perhaps in this room, certainly in this city, to be able to announce to you that this injustice has finally come to an end. But until that time, I've been asked to address not that subject, but two related ones. You've heard from virtually all of the speakers so far the case for the political and moral obligations of the United States in particular, the international community in general, to resume some kind of intervention and oversight over Ashraf in order to prevent the worsening of what threatens to be a serious humanitarian catastrophe. What I want to do is to provide for you some of the legal reasoning that underlies that case. The legal reasoning, incidentally, is, I submit to you, a serious, solid, and persuasive legal argument. This is not a matter of going back in order to come up with something pulled out of thin air in order to support something that is obviously right. Here, the law and the politics and the morality all pull in precisely the same direction. And the point is this. First of all, what the Iraqis are doing with respect to Ashraf is illegal in international law. It is illegal because refoulement is illegal. Refoulement is the forcible removal of refugees to a place where they fear persecution on the grounds of race, religion, ethnicity, or political view. The Iraqis are smart enough to know that the forcible removal of the people of Ashraf to Iran, to their deaths in many cases, to their persecution in virtually all cases, would be unacceptable to the world community. And so what they are doing is attempting to bring about that same result through indirect means. We have a precise analogy to this in Anglo-American law, and I believe in the law of the continent as well. If a landlord wants his tenant out, if an employer wants his employee to leave, it's difficult in many cases simply to terminate the contract, whether it's a lease contract or an employment contract. So what does the employer do? What does the landlord do? He attempts to make the tenant's or the employee's life intolerable, to make the conditions of life so unacceptable that the employee or the tenant has no choice but voluntarily to depart. Now that, I do the air quotes because obviously there is nothing voluntary about such a decision. For someone to give up her home or to give up his job is a serious decision. And yet conditions can be rendered such that it is a more attractive decision than remaining under the intolerable conditions that have been created. And that is precisely what the Iraqis are attempting to do and have been attempting to do at Ashraf. And you don't need to take my word for that, because the policies and practices that have included not just the armed invasion of July 2009, not just the threat to remove the people of Ashraf to a God-forsaken prison camp in the desert, not just the pattern of psychological torture that we've heard about today, but taking all of this together, we see that the government of Iraq at its highest levels have repeatedly explained precisely what they have in mind. They are not keeping any secrets. They say, for example, the government of Iraq has decided to expel the terrorist Mojahedin Khalq, what they call Monafekin grouplet, from Iraqi soil. The file on the terrorist Monafekin grouplet will soon be in its final stage, that is, expulsion from Iraq. Now, I don't need to point out to anyone in this room that the use of the word Monafekin is immediately an indication of who it is who is really speaking. And that is true also, incidentally, of the use of the word grouplet, a word that does not exist, to my knowledge at least, in the English language, And I've seen only in one context, and that is the mullah's constant reference to the PMOI as a grouplet, to suggest it's an inconsequential band of a dozen or so people. This kind of thing has been heard again and again. A spokesman for the government of Iraq in July 2009 said of the people of Ashraf, they do not have legal status. The ICRC and human rights organizations have acknowledged this fact. Well, the ICRC has done no such thing, and no international human rights organization, to my knowledge at least, has ever commented on the lack of status, lack of legal status of the people of Ashraf in Iraq. So there should be no doubt that the same legal principles that conclude in the illegality of forced refoulement also lead to the conclusion that indirect refoulement, constructive refoulement, if you like, is equally prohibited as a matter of international law and equally to be condemned by the entire international community as a matter of law. Second point, what is the role of the United States in all of this? Again, you've heard speakers explaining the moral obligations on the United States because we created this mess after all, and the political obligations on the United States, is the future of the Middle East. But there are legal consequences as well, and I will merely allude to two of them. The first is Article 45 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which specifically addresses the circumstances in which a party that has custody of a group of protected persons may transfer that custody, and it may transfer that custody, to a transferee state. But in doing so, it must guarantee that the transferee will respect the internationally protected rights of the transferred persons. At the time that the transfer took place in 2009, the United States announced that it had such assurances from the Iraqis. I suggest to you that anybody who has watched these videos, or anybody who watched the videos of the invasion in 2009 know that humanitarian treatment is not running armored personnel carriers through a fence. Humanitarian treatment does not include denying chemotherapy to a cancer patient. That's not what the Iraqis promised the United States. So what does the Geneva Convention say? It says if the transferee is unable or unwilling to carry out these responsibilities, the transferor must reassert its position, and it goes on to say this obligation must be observed. That is one of the two legal arguments in favor of U.S. resumption. The second is even more straightforward. At the time that the protected person status was declared, not granted, but declared by the United States in the summer of 2004, each member of Ashraf was asked to sign a contract. And the contract said that the people of Ashraf would give up their arms, would not fight back against the Iraqis, and in exchange for that, the multinational force Iraq would provide for their protection until final disposition could be made. That has not happened. The people of Ashraf have kept their side of the bargain. The United States has not. Those, I submit to you, are the legal arguments in favor of U.S. continued responsibility. I need hardly repeat the moral ones, nor need I hardly in this audience remind you all of what is at stake as we have this conversation. Thank you.